Queer News and Journalism is a Gay 45 original podcast published every week on Thursdays, where we come together to comment the topics in the weekly queer news published by our newsletter, The Nine. Subscribe on gay45.com to get the latest news every week. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today our mission is, well, to try and synthesize a lot of information pretty quickly. The latest The 9 Plus from Gay 45 really paints a complex picture, doesn't it? And maybe an escalating one about community rights globally.
It really does. We're seeing these high-stakes pressure points everywhere.
Yeah, like in corporate boardrooms deciding, where activism needs to stop, or even government agencies trying to redefine who counts as an extremist.
Exactly.
And look, you don't have hours to sort through every headline. So our goal here is really just to pull out the most insightful bits, maybe the alarming ones too, the stuff that sticks. So you walk away feeling like you've got a handle on it, not just overwhelmed.
And if you look across all the reporting from Gay 45, what's kind of fascinating, or maybe worrying, is that even though these fights are happening in different places, different arenas, there's this common thread, right?
Which is?
It's this battle over who controls the public narrative, who gets to define you. Is it like CEOs of multinationals? Is it powerful governments, political appointees? Or is it still the community itself? And we're seeing this power struggle play out like right now in business, in law, in culture.
That's a perfect way to frame it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump straight into that realm of profit versus purpose then. Because nothing sets the stage quite like this corporate squeeze on activism we're seeing. And we have to start with that news that really shook things up. Ben & Jerry's co-founder, Jerry Greenfield, resigning after 47 years. And his parting shots were, well, pretty clearly aimed at the parent company, Unilever.
Oh, definitely. And they cut deep, didn't they? His main point, his accusation, is that Unilever basically silenced and sidelined the brand's social justice work. And this isn't just some minor disagreement, He says it goes right to the heart of the merger deal they made back in 2000. That deal was supposed to protect their ability to speak out on peace, human rights, equity.
And the timing he highlighted makes it even sharper. He argued this corporate sort of gagging happened while threats were rising externally. Civil rights, voting rights, women's rights, immigrants, the LGBTQ+ community.
Right.
He felt like just when their voice was most needed.
They were told to quiet down. Yeah. Now, Unilever, predictably, pushed back. They claimed they just wanted a constructive conversation.
Heard that one before.
Right. But the context is key here. They are currently spinning off the whole ice cream division into this Magnum ice cream company. So the market signal is pretty clear. Activist stances might carry, well, financial risk they don't want right now.
It really does raise that fundamental question, doesn't it? For anyone who believes in cause-based business, is corporate activism just, something you lease? And does that lease, just end the second it might hurt the bottom line? It kind of feels like the answer might be yes here.
I think that's the takeaway, unfortunately. Corporate commitment seems to buckle under shareholder pressure, and we see very similar kinds of pressure being used to silence voices in the media, too. Not just in boardrooms, but, direct political leverage.
Which brings us straight to the U.S. and the whole situation with Jimmy Kimmel Live, where free speech suddenly felt, very conditional. The show got suspended indefinitely, though it was later reinstated after Kimmel's comments about the killing of Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist.
Yeah, and the way the pressure was applied is what's so important to notice. You had the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, who's a political appointee, linked to the previous Republican administration, publicly attacking Kimmel.
Right.
He called the comments, I think, misleading, and actually threatened ABC Disney with regulatory action. That's not just, a Twitter spat. That's a serious threat to their license to operate.
And the irony is it's wild, because Kimmel, not that long ago, was being slammed by the same political side for supposedly having pro-queer politics. Now he's under fire again for something totally different. It really drives home the point. If your speech, whatever it is, upsets a powerful political figure, suddenly your freedom to say it is up for debate.
And if we take that idea, state-backed censorship, and look internationally, the tools sometimes get even blunter. Look at the reporting from Gay 45 on Turkey. The Family and Social Services Ministry there is actively trying to get queer singer Mabel Matiz's new song, Perperşan, banned.
The reasons they gave are just astounding. The ministry cited risks to public order and general health. They actually claimed the song threatens the structure of the family.
Yeah.
And if they succeed, the BTK, their communications authority, could legally force platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, to just pull the track. gone.
And Matiz's response is interesting. It wasn't just legalistic. They offered a cultural defense, right? Saying the work is metaphorical. It's rooted in Turkey's long tradition of bards, of poets.
Yeah.
They're essentially arguing, look, art isn't terrorism. Public order isn't that fragile. It can handle a song. But the state's willingness to use these regulatory bodies to police culture, that's the really chilling part.
And these attempts at control, they seem to escalate dramatically when the focus shifts from just controlling culture to controlling the definition of people themselves. Which brings us to that really serious, frankly troubling reporting Ken Klippenstein did that Gay 45 covered about attempts to classify parts of the community as domestic threats in the U.S.
This is, I think, one of the most critical threads we're seeing. Klippenstein's reports, citing security sources, suggest the FBI actually explored classifying transgender people under the label nihilistic violent extremists, NVEs.
Wow. NVEs. That's a category usually for groups aiming for indiscriminate chaos.
Exactly. Just pure violence, no specific political goal other than disruption. And at the same time, you have pressure from these very organized conservative policy groups, especially those linked to the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025.
Which is that huge plan to basically remake the federal government.
That's the one. They're pushing for a parallel label. Transgender ideology-inspired violent extremism, a VILEV.
Okay.
And what's so concerning about both of these, but maybe Adis especially, is how critics see them working. They argue a VILEV is basically designed to treat speech or dissent against anti-trans policies like, say, protesting a bathroom bill or a healthcare ban
as potential terrorism.
Precisely. As potential acts of domestic terrorism, it risks just completely conflating protected speech, activism, fighting back against harmful policies with actual violent threats.
And is there any evidence to back this up, this idea of a pattern of violence?
Well, critics say absolutely not. There's no credible evidence suggesting a pattern of violence from trans individuals that would justify creating this kind of classification. It looks less like identifying real threats and more like using national security language and tools to silence a political minority. It's control through fear, through relabeling.
And while all this external pressure is mounting, the community itself is dealing with some pretty significant internal splits, isn't it? Like the formation of LGB International.
Yeah, that's another key development Gay 45 reported on. This new global alliance, already involving groups from 18 countries. Their stated reason: they want to refocus advocacy only on same-sex rights.
Right.
The chair, Frederick Schmenke, he was quite explicit. He accused mainstream LGBTQ plus groups of being, quote, entirely devoted to gender identity ideology, and claimed that same-sex attracted people are being sidelined.
And we've seen this kind of tension domestically, too, like in Canada with the new LGBT Alliance Canada criticizing established groups like eGale Canada.
Exactly.
So you have this debate. Supporters say the split allows for needed focus on specific lesbian, gay, and bi issues. But many others argue, look, discrimination protections have to cover everyone who's vulnerable, especially now. They're pushing for unity, not division, when the external threats are so high.
It's a really fundamental argument, isn't it? When resources are tight, when political goodwill feels scarce, the fight over who defines the mission, who gets to be under the umbrella, it gets really intense.
It certainly does. Okay, let's maybe take a breath from the heavy stuff and pivot to something showing real resilience.
Yeah.
A bit of cultural strength. George Takei, legend, right? 88 years old, Star Trek Sulu. He's been named honorary chair of Banned Books Week.
Yeah, this is such a great counter-narrative to all the censorship we've been talking about. And Takei speaks with such moral authority, given his personal history.
Absolutely. He talks openly about being forced into a U.S. internment camp as a child during World War II, about his long years being closeted in Hollywood.
Exactly. And his message is so direct. To be resist censorship so that we can all find ourselves and each other in books. It's not abstract for him, it's deeply personal. And you look at the books most often challenged, like Maya Kobebi's Genderqueer, Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. It tells you exactly whose stories they're trying to erase.
The fight really does start in the library, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And that cultural defense is vital because when community stories aren't being erased culturally, sometimes they're being starved financially, which is what seems to be happening in Germany.
Ah, right. Berlin's queer education projects facing major budget cuts.
Yes, in the draft budget for 2026-27. And these aren't small trims. We're talking about really important initiatives like Queer Leben Intertrans for Youth, the outreach by LSVD Berlin-Brandenburg. They're facing a combined shortfall of over 100,000 Nakases compared to previous years.
Wow. That's significant.
It really is. And the LSPD director, Florian Winkler-Schwartz, put it very bluntly. Queer educational work is violence prevention. And there's data. Studies show LGBTQ inclusive education cuts down harassment, improves well-being for students.
But the political climate.
Exactly. You have the far-right AfD party actively questioning why these programs even exist. So cutting this funding, it isn't just saving money. It feels like actively defunding violence prevention infrastructure.
Okay, before we wrap up these big themes, we really have to touch on the modern battleground for, well, connection and community. Digital platforms.
Grindr. Huge user base, over 13 million monthly users.
Yeah.
They're facing some serious backlash over this new AI system they're calling GAI, pronounced GAI, and specifically how they plan to use vast amounts of user data to train it.
Right. So Granger's official line is that GAI will personalize the user experience and help create more authentic, meaningful connections. They're talking about future features like, I don't know, chat summaries and A-list tools.
Well, users aren't buying it.
Well, there's a lot of skepticism, yeah. And it's understandable. The critique K45 pointed out is that this comes at a time when many users feel the app experience is already getting worse. More paywalls, things feeling clunkier, practices that analysts have bluntly called enshittification. Huh. Yeah, I've heard that term. That painful slide where platforms seem to prioritize squeezing out profit over actually serving their users. So, wait, GAI is going to help me find true love by summarizing my awkward DMs even while the app itself feels like it's falling apart.
It kind of captures the whole deep dive in miniature, doesn't it? Even our most private digital spaces are now subject to these corporate algorithms, this drive for data collection, often seemingly prioritized over user trust, maybe even safety. Users can opt out, technically, through privacy settings.
But the default is using your data.
Seems like it. And the fact that this incredibly private, sensitive data is the fuel for their AI, well, it's sparked a huge debate about privacy in a community that historically has been very vulnerable to data breaches and exposure.
Absolutely. Okay, before we try and tie this all together, let's just quickly celebrate that culture does find a way. Gay45's Culture Digest had some really exciting stuff.
Yeah, it did.
On the film front, there's The History of Sound, starring Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. Described as a lyrical romance set after World War I. Already got a Palme d'Or nomination. Sounds amazing.
And in music, the Irrepressibles released a Yo Homo Deluxe Edition. It's getting praised as this huge milestone, mixing orchestral sounds of punk energy. Sounds fierce. Plus, the Brisbane New Farm Queer Film Festival announced its lineup Sundance winners like Twinless, the cult hit Dead Lover. Culture keeps happening.
It really does.
So, okay, if we try to synthesize this whole pretty packed dive for you listening, what have we seen? We've seen this fight for queer visibility, for self-definition happening everywhere at once, it feels like. Corporate boardrooms with Ben & Jerry's, legislative chambers trying to reclassify people with the FBI of stuff, budget battles over essential funding in Germany, even our dating apps with Grindr. The core challenge again and again seems to be, how do you sustain independence? Financial independence, political recognition, the basic right to define yourself.
Yeah.
When you're up against these really powerful commercial and political forces that constantly want to police those very categories.
That focus on policing categories.
Yeah.
It brings us right back around, actually, to the final book review in Gay45, the novel Anyone's Ghost. It's described as heartbreaking, but also life-affirming, exploring those really blurred, essential lines between love and friendship with aching authenticity. And that maybe leaves a final thought for you to mull over. In the world so focused on putting things in boxes, defining extremism, defining identity, judging activism, where do you actually find and how do you protect that essential raw honesty you need to define yourself and your own relationships, that quiet, maybe messy authenticity?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the hardest thing to hold on to. You can also listen to any of our articles. Visit gay45.com to read more quality journalism.